The HKTDC Hong Kong Book Fair returns to the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center on the 21st of July. In terms of visitor numbers, the 7-day event is the world's largest Chinese language book fair, but this year it turns a new page with a greatly expanded English language offering. And part of that will be a seminar conducted by one of Hong Kong's leading English language authors, Susie. She's a writer in residence at the City University of Hong Kong. Susie, thanks for joining us. Now first, if we could ask a little bit about your multicultural background. As a Chinese Indonesian who spends some time in New York City, how does that influence your writing?
Okay, well, I'm Chinese Indonesian from Hong Kong. I'm born and raised here, but with parents who came from abroad, I think from a very young age, first of all, I heard multiple languages at home. I had visitors from all over the world in my home. My father did business with Indonesians and Japanese and later with Filipinos and British and Portuguese. So to me, the idea of people being from another race, who looked different from me, who spoke various languages, was always kind of the norm. I think this was actually a good thing. It made me think about life as being part of the world, and that Hong Kong was where I was born, what was home, but it wasn't the only place in the world, and that I could see beyond that.
Now at the Hong Kong Book Fair, your seminar will be called Writing Between English and Chinese. Can you tell us a little bit about what you'll be talking about?
I thought I would focus at the book fair on the issue of writing between languages. Although English is, for all intents and purposes, what you would call my mother tongue or native language, I actually don't say it is. I say that both English and Cantonese as a second language are my mother tongues, because in fact that's how I was brought up. Neither one of my parents spoke English or Cantonese as their native languages or mother tongues. So what they transmitted to us was an imperfect form of the language. I actually never lived in a place where everybody spoke English until I went to America at 17 to go to college. And likewise in Hong Kong, even though Cantonese surrounded me in school, my parents didn't really, they spoke it, but they spoke it with very distinctly foreign accents. So, I always heard Cantonese as something that was outside the home. So this created a very interesting space for me in terms of how I thought about language.
Now I understand you have a background in the commercial field before you started to focus on writing. Can you tell us how that influences what you do?
Partly you have to make a living, I came out of college with a degree in English and looked around and said, well, what do? I have to get a job. So the choice was you teach, which I didn't want to do at the time, or you just get a job. And I basically just got a job, and I tumbled into the obvious sort of professions for somebody who likes language. So I ended up more or less in marketing more than anything else. I'm a realist fiction writer, basically. I write sort of the way it is. And the world that's real in Hong Kong is the commercial world. So I think that it's been helpful in that I've had to face the real world. This is the way it is. What do people think about? They think about how to make a living. They think about, where my next meal's coming from. They think about, the boss who's a pain in the neck, And this is what ordinary people think about. And I think that, what is interesting for a novelist especially, and I think the role of the novelist is to look at the world in your time and place and what that meant for history and for time. And that's what I try to do. And that world that surrounds me is the business world.
Well, in addition to language, themes of identity also emerge in your work. How does that underscore what's going on in Hong Kong and around Asia?
Hong Kong isn't a nation state. Immediately the question of identity arises then. Now for the writer, especially the writer of fiction, there is no national identity that you can hook onto if you're from Hong Kong. We talk about the great Chinese novel, the great Russian novel, the great British or American novel. To even put great in front of a Hong Kong novel is almost an oxymoron. Because Hong Kong isn't about its national state. Hong Kong is about a space that connects to the world. Hong Kong, it's very multicultural, it's very international, and it's very mixed up. And that makes it fun to write about, because to have to subscribe to one nation, to have to pledge allegiance, which I did do as an American citizen, to one nation, is in a way a false construct of identity. Hong Kong doesn't make that demand on you. And that means that as a human in the 21st century, I should add probably, that it's very much the way of the world. We were postmodern before the term was invented. This is what I like most about Hong Kong.
Could you tell us a bit about your latest work?
My most recent book is a collection of essays. It's my first collection of essays. Before that, I was principally a fiction writer. And it's called Evanescent Isles, with a photograph of a evanescent Hong Kong island in the smog, smog, you know. I have pieces in there which are very personal about my upbringing here in Hong Kong, but also sort of commentary on Hong Kong, but in not the sort of editorial way that a journalist would do, but rather in the way that a writer comes at it, and just sort of observing the contemporary world, the society, transportation, even taxis, you know, anything that is Hong Kong to me, that gets in there. I also have the history of Hong Kong, but I kind of retold it. I interviewed the city of Hong Kong and let him tell me the story. I decided it was male and adolescent, sort of, you know, kind of cranky, too old adolescent. That's sort of the voice that's there.
So what are you working on next?
Well, it's a new novel. It's called Habit of a Foreign Sky, and it was the book that was shortlisted for the Man Asian Prize. So I'm really happy about it coming out. It's soft launching sort of right now, actually, but it will actually launch in October, and it's launching internationally. And it's the first time I'll have books actually distributed in Britain, so I'm quite happy about that. It's an interesting book in that it's very Hong Kong, but sort of transnational. It sort of takes place between Hong Kong and New York in the financial world, with a little bit of Shanghai, since finance, you can't get away from Shanghai either. And the main character is a Hong Kong person, a Hong Kong woman from Maryknoll. I actually made her a Maryknoll girl. And she's Eurasian. She's a reluctant Eurasian. She wants to be more Chinese than she wants to be Western. And she uses her Chinese name rather than her Western name. And there's a reason for it, as you find out when you read the book.
Well, as a writer, what do you hope to discover at the Hong Kong Book Fair, and why do you think that event is important for Hong Kong and Asia?
Well, I think any book fair is important for any place in the world, and Hong Kong especially. I think it's important that, you know, we don't lose sight of something other than commerce. Well, books bring us commerce too, but books are about thought about history, geography, the world. It's about reflecting on the blade of grass or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be about something practical. And I think that's important, because life isn't just about what is practical. So I think as long as we have books, I think it's important that we have a book fair, and we will always have books in some form, even with our electronic age. It'll be text, I suppose. So that I think it's a fabulous thing. I know it's a huge book fair. Now, I've never been a part of it before because, of course, it's a focus on Chinese language books. And what I hope to find there is that they've asked me to speak in Cantonese for the fair, which I will do my best at that. I will do a form of Cantolish, I guess. What I'm hoping is to reach a different sort of reader, because I think people who come to the book fair are readers anyway, but they read in Chinese. But I'm sure, since most of them are from Hong Kong, they're also literate in English. And this may be a way for me to be able to speak to and connect with a different kind of reader. And that will be interesting.
Susie, thank you very much for speaking with us, and we'll see you at the Hong Kong Book Fair.